Well, for more on corporate involvement in Pride and the so-called rainbow economy, let's bring in Calvin Dark. He's the principal and co-founder of RC Communications. Welcome back to the show. So as we know, Pride is celebrated in June in the US and also, though, in different months in different countries around the world. So what are you seeing in terms of the growth, in terms of global celebrations for Pride?
Well, I think from a business standpoint, businesses are doing what helps them do what they do, have more business. And I think as culture changes, as traditions change, as countries and places in countries that 10, 20 years ago we would have never thought, would have marriage equality. Now that that's spreading, businesses are saying it's an opportunity because that's one other advantage they can have over their competitors.
Now, what sort of money do we see these individual sort of month-long events bring in when it comes to supporting these causes versus other times of year, say?
Well, I think because the movement for LGBT equality has a very recognizable and easy to duplicate symbol, it does make it easy. And you notice there are a lot of companies that don't even make statements about LGBT issues. But if they put a rainbow on a product, they're automatically associated with all the goodwill. And so in that sense, it builds businesses who may not even be actively participating in civil rights for LGBT or anywhere in this country or abroad.
And that's the interesting issue, because there is some skepticism that you do have these companies which appear to be visibly supporting the LGBT community during Pride, but then when you look at their workforce, the sort of things that they invest in, we're not seeing that same level of commitment. How can people be sure that these companies are actually walking the walk?
Well, I think it's important to see what happens during the parades in June, but then what happens when Congress comes back in session in the fall. As you mentioned in the lead up, most states in this country do not have laws that prohibit discrimination against LGBT citizens. So those same companies need to be just as vocal that they're going to make that a legislative priority. Something here in the US that's a little bit different too. Companies have to remember that they may have dealings with a project or a politician on an issue totally unrelated to LGBT equality. But if that same person or project or politician is tied to what's perceived as discrimination, they have to restructure their business in an area that has nothing to do with it other than image.
So it definitely can be something of a minefield. So what sort of efforts are being made to really make it more transparent about who these companies are supporting?
Well, I think that's where social media really helps, because it's one thing to do the big push for, with rainbow symbols all over your products, but it's really easy to Google who is supporting who. And it's really easy to put on social media who those companies are. We're seeing that happen every time there is an incident where a company sponsors a show. They may not have anything to do with the content of it, but whether it's LGBT rights or abortion rights in the US, companies have to be quick, because all you need is one Twitter thread about what you support to ruin your business.
Now, let's also talk about this issue of allies. We know that when Taylor Swift came out with her music video, a lot of people were like, is she really an ally? Is she just capitalizing on Pride? Talk about the ways that people can support. Say, if they haven't supported in the past or haven't been as vocal in the past, how can they still play a role with sort of, without being demonized, as sort of trying to capitalize on this?
Well, I think they have to remember what my grandmother told me when I was little. People are going to be upset no matter what you do. With Taylor Swift, she got criticized for her first 10 years of her career because she didn't speak out politically. Then when she did, she got criticized for not being genuine. And that is up for debate. Of course, she's trying to raise her brand as well. But I think the key to what I think is the best way to evaluate it, notice what she did after the video. There was a specific plea to call your congressperson to pass the Equality Act. So it can be both. You can do it to increase your bottom line and to affect change. So I think if those two are partnered, then it can be seen as credible.
Now let's also look at Pride itself as an event, which obviously is to remember the Stonewall riots of 1969. There is an issue, though, that people are wondering, is the history of it getting lost? Is it becoming too much about the parties and the commodification of the Pride symbol? Mm-hmm. But in this political age, is that still the case, or do you see any sort of turning of the tide?
Well, I think our current president and the administration and some of the policies are combating what you just said. Because a lot of people forget, marriage equality wasn't a thing here in the United States till what, 2015? So we're not talking about a long time. There were a lot of progresses made during the Obama administration, where I think what you were talking about with more on the parties and not as much on the history, I think that was the trend. But now when you have the transgender ban in the military and active opposition of equality legislation, people are realizing the history is important because it's not over.
Exactly. Very good points. Great to have you on. Calvin Dark, their principal and co-founder of RC Communications.